right, now let's get into some running back start sits. Guys that, you could be looking at putting in your flex spot, maybe guys that you might be questioning plugging in with some of the bye weeks and all the injuries that we've seen throughout this year. We'll start with some pretty chalk options and get a little bit deeper as we go along. The first one here is an auto start to me every single week, regardless of matchup, but he has a great one this week, and it's James Robinson against Detroit. Is he an auto start for you?
He's an auto start. I mean, he's a top 10 running back right now in PPR. A little bit of a disappointing week last week. I mean, only 13 carries for 48 yards. Still got 7 targets. The passing, receiving work really made up for the low efficiency game on the ground. He's getting a ton of volume. He's involved in the passing game. James Robinson is an auto start.
James Robinson could end the year as a RB1 just because he's game script proof. But if they start losing, he's going to see the passing volume. If they're winning, it means he's rushing efficiently and has a chance to get in the end zone.
Who knew? He's a workhorse.
He's a workhorse back. And people are concerned about Devino Zigbo and Chris Thompson and Radko Armstead. I'm not concerned for them at all. We've seen enough now at this point to say that James Robinson is the guy. He has the skill set, and he's been doing fantastic for the volume that he's given as an undrafted free agent rookie that was thrown in when Leonard Fournette got cut 2 weeks before the season. But let's talk about another running back. James Robinson coming off a disappointing performance. On the other end of the spectrum, we got Todd Gurley coming in at the high end of the spectrum with 25 fantasy points. Only played on 57% of the snaps last week, but had 121 yards and a touchdown. Had 8.6 yards per carry on a super soft Carolina Panthers run defense. Are you plugging Todd Gurley back in against Minnesota, which should be another soft matchup?
Yeah, you don't sit him after the big game. He also had 5 targets in that game, which was great to see. This, Falcons-Vikings game should be a shootout. Any game with the Falcons is a shootout. So if Gurley's going to start getting passing work, he's already gotten the work on the ground, and another guy who, believe it or not, is a top 12 running back right now thus far this season. So Gurley is still an auto start. I mean, it feels nasty in a way. We were trying to say to sell there early on, but he just keeps scoring touchdowns, man. So until he proves you otherwise, you got to leave him in the lineup.
As far as I can see here, not all the over-unders are out yet, but that Falcons-Vikings game has one of the highest over-unders on the week, 54.5 points, tied there with that Arizona Cardinals-Dallas Cowboys game. So love Gurley in this matchup. We got a lot of good matchups, and that trickles down to another running back who's been emerging, also coming off a disappointing outing in week 5. It's Antonio Gibson, who gets the New York Giants. We're seeing kind of this turmoil, this carousel of different quarterbacks that are coming in that Washington football team backfield. It looks like Kyle Allen's going to be back to being the guy. I'm plugging Antonio Gibson in, no questions asked, against the Giants. Are you doing the same?
Yeah, I'll start him because of the matchup. He's getting enough work right now to where he is an RB2. I mean, he kind of got game scripted out of this one, only had the 11 carries for 27 yards, but he still did see 5 targets and had 5 receptions on those targets. So if they're going to keep throwing to the running back, I know J.D. McKissick is there as well, but if they're going to keep throwing it to the running back, both of these guys are going to eat. So you leave Antonio Gibson in. There's a couple other guys that I think I would take over him in that range, but chances are you're not doing any better at your RB2 right now, so I'm fine to keep rolling out Gibson. Great matchup against the Giants.
So how about David Johnson, who is up against Tennessee? They're 8th right now against the run. So a little bit of a scary matchup here. They shut down Devin Singletary last week. We saw the emergence of TJ Yeldon on Tuesday Night Football. But for David Johnson, he's really been a volume or floor play so far. I expected big things from him in that game against Jacksonville. It was a super soft matchup, even with Duke Johnson coming back. And even with Duke Johnson back in the lineup, David Johnson still saw 4 targets. He saw 17 attempts and was actually running pretty efficiently at 17 attempts for 96 yards. That's 5.6 yards per carry. You wish he would have gotten the touchdown in this game. That probably would have saved his week, would have given you, 18 points as opposed to 12. But for David Johnson, the guy is really just a volume play in a tough matchup. Are you willing to plug him back in there? I think I am.
Yeah, you got to keep rolling him out. He's one of those names that's just a steady, solid RB2 each and every week. And sometimes he's going to disappoint, but most of the time he's going to give you enough volume to have a floor. If he gets 15 carries and can get the 3 or 4 targets through the air, that's good enough to have a really solid game from a volume standpoint. And every now and then he's on a good offense. He's going to fall in the end zone as well. David Johnson probably not going to, explode for a massive, crazy game. But I love him as a floor play and a really solid, steady, consistent RB2. So you got to keep rolling him out there.
In a week with a lot of great matchups for running backs, David Johnson has one of the worst ones. but he's still a solid RB2. He's right now sitting at the 24th running back on the year in PPR leagues. I expect him to go up and kind of fall in the middle of that RB2 range. He's the solid, steady, safe guy that you can plug in. Outside of him, let's move to a little bit deeper options. Jerick McKinnon, coming off an extremely disappointing game against the Miami Dolphins. I was expecting big things from McKinnon. I thought the passing work was going to be there, but Jimmy G didn't look like himself. CJ Beathard was coming in. For Jerick McKinnon, who was only on the field for 25% of snaps, do you have the balls to plug him back in against the LA Rams on Sunday Night Football in Week 6?
No, I don't want to. I mean, part of me thinks that game they had was just a throwaway game. They have so many injuries. Jimmy G's first game back, and they just got hit in the mouth and can never recover. So I kind of want to throw it out the window. But with McKinnon, I would much rather wait and see before I'm rolling him right back out there. I know he disappointed a lot of fantasy managers last week. And here's what I'll say about McKinnon. Something that concerned me even headed into last week against the Dolphins. I said if Raheem Mostert is back, I don't want to start Jerick McKinnon. And the reason why is we saw the 2 great weeks from McKinnon when Mostert was out. 14 carries in each of those games, was seeing a ton of targets, averaged 6 targets a game while Mostert was out. But week 1 and 2 with Raheem Mostert active, McKinnon only had 3 carries in each of those games. He only had 3 targets a game in those games. So can you really start a running back that's going to get you like 5-6 touches, maybe has touchdown upside? No. So until we see McKinnon get that kind of workload with Mostert in the lineup, I'm kind of trying to avoid him. In week 1 and 2, he was bailed out by touchdowns. I'm kind of staying away. He gets the Rams next week, then the Patriots. So, I mean, tough sledding here for Jerick McKinnon. And I'm leaving him on my bench for the time being.
Yeah, I think I'm with you. McKinnon's had touchdowns in his first 4 games. This is his first game that he didn't have a touchdown. I like McKinnon a lot rest of season, but for the next foreseeable future here for week 6 and 7, I'm trying not to start him if I can help it. And I want to see how things go, how the snaps here shake out with Jeff Wilson, Raheem Mostert, both active. In this game, he only saw 1 attempt on the ground. And when you see something like that, that's extremely alarming. He's just not going to be able to do it on that type of volume. I think he looks really explosive. I like him a lot. I've been trying to get him in some spots, but not looking to start him in week 6 against the Rams defense. That's 11th against running backs. Next one here on this list, 2 more to go through. The first one, we'll kind of lump these guys together, and I think we're tempted to start both of them. It's Kenyon Drake and Chase Edmonds, both with the Arizona Cardinals. Chase Edmonds was a deep shot of the week for me last week.
Great pick.
Absolutely went off. Had 20 fantasy points, only 3 rushing attempts and 6 targets, but he was making his hay through the air, had a rushing attempt that was explosive. It was a 29-yard touchdown run. It looked great out there. I'm ready for Chase Edmonds to get the reins to this offense, but I don't know if that's going to happen with Kenyon Drake still there. But are you willing to go back to the well with Chase Edmonds in a matchup that should be fantastic for him against Dallas?
Yeah, I'll start both. It doesn't feel good, but I'm willing to start both. I mean, Edmonds is more of a flex option, and Drake, I think, is an RB2. It is a great matchup, and this is kind of a nasty comp, but I'm going to make it anyway. And it's not perfect, but this right now and the way the work is breaking down is reminding me a little bit of the James White, Sony Michel split that was happening in New England there for a while. Like Sony Michel, clearly the runner in the offense, getting 15 to 20 carries a game, might get a target or 2 sprinkled in there. And then James White, someone who's coming in getting 6 targets a game, and he might get a couple carries as well. That's how this backfield is breaking down. I mean, Kenyon Drake right now is averaging over 16 carries a game.
Unreal.
But he only has 6 targets on the entire season. And like you said, Chase Edmonds coming out, getting that receiving work, getting 6 targets in each of the last 2 games. And only 3-4 carries a week, but he's incredibly efficient with it. And with the receiving work, he's doing enough to be startable in PPR.
Longest run against the Jets for Kenyon Drake was a 10-yard run. The efficiency's not there. I don't know if he's still hurt. Remember preseason he was walking around with a walking boot. It makes me question if there actually was something there with the injury. I know a lot of people, myself included, disregarded that and expected a lot of things from Drake. But I think it's only a matter of time at this point. I don't know if it's going to happen even this season or in the next couple of weeks. I think Chase Edmonds is going to take over that backfield. Things are looking bleak for Kenyon Drake here, but I am willing to start him in this fantastic matchup. Let's talk about one more here. Devin Singletary, who got absolutely shut down by the Tennessee Titans. Only 4.3 fantasy points. only played 64% of snaps with Zach Moss still out of the lineup. We saw TJ Yeldon come in and get some usage. It actually looked like the better back on the day.
He did.
Only one target in the game when they were trailing, so I figured that Singletary would be in for a great night, and I turned on the game towards the end. I was like, oh, great. Like, Singletary broke off a big run towards the end of the game, and I was like, oh, I'm going to go check his box score. I'm sure he's been crushing it this entire game, and it turns out he had not. So are you willing to plug Singletary in against a tough run defense in Kansas City?
I'm willing to, but I'm actually leaning sit on this one. Singletary is a little bit concerning for me. A big piece of this is going to be whether or not Zach Moss plays. I mean, week 1 and 2, when Zach Moss was active, Singletary was playing less than 60% of snaps. Weeks 3 and 4, when Singletary had some good games, Zach Moss was out, was up in the upper 80s in terms of snap counts. This week, we saw Yeldon get incredibly involved when they were trailing. Yeldon got 3 targets. Singletary only got 1. That doesn't make sense to me. So if Zach Moss is back, he's going to take some rushing work on the ground, a little bit of receiving work, maybe goal line work. We know what Josh Allen does on the goal line as well. So I'm trying to bench Singletary if I can. But with bye weeks and things, if you have to plug him in there, I don't think you should fade him for, some option off the waiver wire or, some incredible stretch. But if I have another option, I'm definitely willing to sit Devin Singletary against the Chiefs.
Should expect him to see at least, double-digit touches, a couple targets through the air as well. I think he's safe for, 10 to 14 fantasy points. Just don't expect big things from Singletary in week 6.